Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't win. Don't give us the burn, don't give us your stink eye. We try our best, and we're successful. Come watch our show, Red River sponsors. It's time to start, enjoy the show.
And you're very welcome in. This is Betting Weekly Live. You're with Dan Roebuck and James Eastham. We're going to be talking our way through some Serie A action, some League Cup football, and some Liga action as well, which comes up tomorrow, of course. James, how are you? First time we've spoke since the European show late last week, in which you went overs with the shots at Real Madrid, and boy, did it go overs. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, it was great, wasn't it, to watch that game, knowing we'd gone very high on Real Madrid shots in El Clasico against Barcelona, and they did us proud. Loads and loads of shots, which is a trend on Real Madrid this season that we picked out. So that was great. And really looking forward to the show today. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? We've got games from all sorts of different countries and different leagues, so plenty to get stuck into.
Yeah, I must admit, I think about 60 minutes in to the game, I just checked the stats, and I think it was something like 16, and we needed 18 to cash. And I thought, crikey, this is not going to be like the Rio corners from the other week where we're waiting half an hour. But was he like 24 in the end, or 23?
I think it was. Do you know what, as well? I was watching from the start, and there were no shots in the first, I think, 15 minutes. It was crazy. And then a glut. So they don't necessarily spread them out evenly through the game, but they do seem to get there, Real Madrid, when it comes to being shot monsters this season. So something to look out for, because, you know, we flagged it up at the weekend because it's happened so often. I think, having watched how they play, I think it's going to carry on for most of the season.
Yeah, let's hope so. Well, when we're on, at least, anyway.
Yeah.
Very good day to SF9er, who is in the chat, as is Duncan. Mike as well. Rick is with us. Villa fan says, talk about painting the town red, Dan. Yes. Good to see you both. End offline says, afternoon all. And Bully Charles says, good day, Dan and James. Mike is with us as well. Love the new animation on the like button. That's something I've not noticed, to be honest with you. SF9 says, shout out to Fonseca and Mutet. Rotterdam Tourist Sports had to play Barcelona goalkeeper saves off that shout. Great call. And the real Brendan King says, morning from Toronto. Where's Roebuck streaming from? Yes, if only you knew. These are some big bets from the weekend. Troy, our producers, put these in, and I don't know why, because he's a Commanders fan, and they got hammered by the Chiefs last night, 35-7. But he's a pro, so he just puts them in the messages anyway. This was a $65,000 play on the Chiefs, minus 11.5 on the spread, which was a winner, plus 102. Also a $43,000 play on the Chiefs live, minus 5.5, minus 123 against the Commanders, which was also a winner as well. Just some of the big bets on the Chiefs. It was tight early on, Troy was telling me, but then it all went to pieces, unfortunately, for the Commanders. And some nice plays on one or two of the prop bets as well. $35,000 play. Oh, this was a loser, in fact, I beg your pardon. $35,000 play on Marquise Brown over 14.5 yards on the longest reception, which was a loser. $27,000 play on Kareem Hunt anytime touchdown, plus 320, which was a winner. In terms of the soccer big bets that we've had over the course of the last 24 hours, I know that the boys were doing really, really well. Jack messaged me to suggest that we had one or two new people in the chat, in the watching the broadcast, and cashing some decent tickets as well with the picks from the plays. I don't think the daily double, unfortunately, cashed, but many of the selections from Steve and Jack did. So well done if you followed them in. I think Porto was one of them. We had a $15,000 play on Porto live, team total over 1.5 goals, minus 130, which was a winner. Also live over 1.5 first half goals, which was a winner as well. That's a $16,000 play. In MLS, Cincinnati live over 0.5 first half goals, which was a loser against the Crew. And also some action on the Women's Nations League, Slovenia against Serbia. $13,000 play over 4.5 goals at minus 143, which was a winner as well. And also one play on the Turkish football, which was Gaziantepspor against Fenerbahce, which was over 3 Asian total, plus 104, which was a win of $12,000 on that one as well. And there's one or two stories coming up about Turkish football that from a betting angle are quite interesting, but we're not going to cover on this show. But nonetheless, have a Google of that. I'm sure people are across it. What we've got coming up live for you, streaming wise, all 3 League Cup games in England are covered. So if you've got BetRivers account, you can watch that. You can watch it on the app or on the site. Likewise, some League One football, Bradford, Lincoln. That's a good one towards the top of the table. League Two, Accrington Stanley against Tranmere. That's one towards the foot of the League Two standings. Also, action in Switzerland, in Belgium, in Austria. Lots of domestic cup football coming up this midweek. 10 Dutch cup matches as well. There's Polish cup games, Bulgarian, Romanian as well, plus lower league fixtures in Italy and in France as well. Also Coppa Sudamericana and some women's action as well. Plenty of tennis also covered. If you want to watch any of the action, you've got a BetRivers account, you can do. That's the streaming for you. Let's get into some of the games that we're going to preview. As we mentioned, Serie A is going to take centre stage first up, and we're going to talk about the Lecce-Napoli game first up, James. Here, Lecce are plus 600 here. Napoli are minus 186. They've drifted a little bit. When I was putting my notes together earlier, they were minus 220 for this game. Huge win for them at the weekend against Inter, a 3-1 success, but not without cost because De Bruyne is out with a hamstring injury and he's probably going to be out, I reckon, maybe until the new year. We shall see what happens with De Bruyne. Might mean that McTominay gets more of a go in his preferred position. We talked about a little bit about that on the European show last week, so it'd be interesting to see if he does just that. Napoli have won the last 5 away at Lecce. I tend to think they'll win. The question is, do I want to bet them at minus 186? What's your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, to see the price change on Napoli, given that they've had this big win at the weekend. You know, a 3-1 win against Inter was a fantastic result for them. And I've given them a bit of stick. I've got to say, on the European show not that long ago, I mentioned I'm going to leave them alone for a while because they had been inconsistent. I'm going to break my own rule here pretty quickly, Dan, to be honest. I think they're a good bet here, Napoli. It's obviously a short price on the money line, but I think in a funny way, you would never say a team is better off without Kevin De Bruyne. Never. I mean, it would make no sense at all. But I think it will give Antonio Conte the chance to revert a little bit back to a system a bit closer to the one they used when they won the Scudetto last season. As in, McTominay now can play probably in areas of the pitch where he would rather be. I know he scored in the last couple of games. He got on the score sheet in that 3-1 win against Inter. He got both goals, didn't he, last week when they lost 6-2 to PSV. But he has been pushed out a little bit to make room for Kevin De Bruyne in midfield. With De Bruyne now sideline, that problem goes away. So if Conte wants to give McTominay the role he had last season, playing exactly where he wants to on the pitch, he can do. I think in the short term, that might help Napoli. And I think also on the back of that win against Inter at the weekend, what a great game this is. You could have a much tougher game than Lazio away to be facing. Lots of reasons for that, which I can run through. First of all, with Napoli, we know they're a pretty good team away from home. I always think they won the title last year based on how they played away from home. They made very few mistakes in this type of match. They were very comfortable in this type of match. And I think part of their muscle memory from last season is still there. So it should be a decent game for them. And Lecce at home have not been great. They've yet to win at home this season. They've drawn 2, they've lost 2. They lost 2-1 at home to Milan in August, which is sort of the only comparable side they faced to Napoli as in potential top 4 team. And I think they've only won 1 out of 14 at home this year. They've lost 8 and they fell to scoring 9 out of 14 in the calendar year. So really struggling. I think it suits Napoli. As I say, they were very good in this type of game last season. They were very good generally against the bottom 6 last season. I think they won 10 out of 12. I think Napoli would be the way to play. Obviously, the money line price will be too short for a lot of people. But if you want to take them -1 on the Asian handicap, available at around -110, that would be a play worth looking at. If you want to take the -0.75 on the Asian handicap, it's obviously going to be a bit shorter. But either of those, if you're looking for a single, I think would be worth doing. We're going to double up today, Dan, aren't we, on the live show here, Daily Double. Napoli on the money line at minus 186. That would be the first leg for me of a double on the games we're going to be looking at today, because I think everything here suggests that the game falls at a good time for Napoli. The team news is good. The form, both short and long term on both sides, points to a Napoli win. So I'm pretty confident that they can get the 3 points.
Yeah, that is the first leg of the daily double. Napoli on the money line, incidentally. Getting quite a few of you in the chat, and I saw this on Twitter as well, actually, talking about the newsletter. I will put it to the powers that be. Apparently, one of the videos didn't work, or there was a wrong angle in it, a little bit of wrong content. But yeah, we'll have a further look into that one. I'm sure it's been picked up somewhere for you. But thanks for the nudge from plenty of you on the chat at the moment. Who was talking about McTominay's shots on target? Rotterdam Tourist Board saying value in McTominay's shots on target once again. I had a look into this one, and I found a bet that's disappeared in price a little bit, but maybe not completely. If you look at the stats between McTominay and Anguissa, and Anguissa's not a name that I'd ever sort of really think that was going to be playing on an anytime goal scorer or a shot on target play. However, their stats this season are very similar and their prices are very, very different. McTominay's around about minus 175 to have one or more shot on target. And Anguissa was plus 195. He's been betting to plus 148 over the course of the last sort of 6 hours. Wow. His numbers this season, it still works out. Basically, this campaign, McTominay's had 16 shots, 7 on target, 2 goals. Anguissa's had 18 shots, 7 on target, and 3 goals. So, in terms of playing at plus 195 in what he was, you've got a massive value bet. At plus 148, I still think you've got a value play. If you include last year's figures, Anguissa's stats are not anything like as good, and they're certainly not anything like as good as McTominay's. If you squeeze the shots for Anguissa this season and last, just in Serie A, plus 150 is borderline. But based on this season, for whatever reason, he's getting forward a little bit more. And the fact that Lecce are going to be a team that sits back, you're going to see Anguissa get quite a lot of the ball, I would have thought. And also, he's decent in the air as well. 3 of those shots on target, incidentally, have been headed shots, and he scored once with his head this season. So I think Anguissa, he's plus 148 at the moment. You could have a little bit of fun with that one. He's not in my mind, James, he's not an attacking player. Yeah. But his stats suggest this season maybe something a bit different. Yeah,
really interesting stats there, Dan. I did think it was noteworthy that all 3 of the Napoli goals in that 3-1 win over Inter came from midfielders. I know one of them, I think the De Bruyne one was a penalty, wasn't it? But we know they've had problems up front this season. Lukaku has been out.
Still out.
Lukaku's still out. Lorenzo Lucca's come in. They've not been massively pleased. I don't think the fans, certainly with how he's performed. And he's not a prolific goal scorer, I don't think. Anyway, so I think the onus is absolutely on those midfielders to get forward. We know McTominay can do it. I think he's plus 210 to score, which looks pretty good if you consider his form last season and the fact he's scored in their last 2 in all competitions. But I think it does just create a bit more space or reason for the midfielders to get forward when you cannot hang your hat on somebody in the number 9 position to get goals. So, yeah, I do think it's worth looking at. Just to clear up one of the questions I saw there earlier on, going off at a tangent here, I saw somebody, apologies, forgot your name, asking about the photo in the background there. I think I'm pointing at it correctly. A young Kenny Dalglish, yes, correctly identified. The reason that is on my shelf this week for any viewers outside the UK is there is a Kenny Dalglish documentary coming out in the movie theatres and cinemas across the UK this week about his career and life. And I was chatting to a family member about it and remembered I did have a Kenny Dalglish photo.
Fantastic.
Which was bought at the club shop at Anfield in, I think, 1985. Tucked away somewhere, 40 years old. So in honor of the Dalglish documentary coming out this week, I dug it out and put it on the shelf. So it may be for 1 week only, but that to explain for the viewer eagle-eyed viewer who spotted it in the background. You're absolutely right. New addition to the bookshelf. And that's why it's up this week.
Brilliant. Love that. A bit of King Kenny on the bookshelves. Yeah, I think it may well have been Rotterdam Tourist Board who said it. Somebody said it earlier. But yeah, a lot of people punting Napoli, it would appear. today. -1 is going to be popular. The real Brendan King says taking Napoli -1 to keep the momentum going after that big win against Inter. DJ Stiles says Napoli moneyline plus under 4.5 better than -1. Yeah, a lot of people play that. It's the sort of go-to under 4.5 in the money line when it's short, or 3/4 ball Asian line. Steve says good day. He's at the gym today. Is Steve? So looking forward to the midweek card. Lecce have to be opposed. Yeah, we talk about FJ. We talked about Bronier's injured. We said, well, I think he's going to be out until New Year because they're saying it's significant and serious hamstring grade of injury. Mike says Lorenzo Luca couldn't score to save his own life. McTominay, we trust. Dave says Liverpool legend talking about King Kenny. And Greta had the exact same one autographed.
There you go.
That's why I recognised it. It was Greta did it. Yeah. Tristan says taking Lecce, be the 1%. 99% of the money, 98% of the tickets on Napoli. We've had a $5,000 play on Napoli on the money line at -190. Most of the money is on overs as well. Napoli have won each of the last 5 away at Lecce. It's over a decade since they last beat them at home. Under 1.5 goals market is hit in each of the last 3 Serie A matches between Lecce and Napoli. Let's take a look at Atalanta against Milan, shall we? Here, only 2 teams in the top 5 leagues across Europe are unbeaten this season. Bayern is one of them. Atalanta is the other. Incredible, really, but they have drawn an awful lot of games. They're plus 160 here. Milan are plus 165. The tie plus 225. Milan haven't conceded away from home. Only team in the top 5 leagues not to concede away. Therefore, they haven't been beat. Atlanta have drawn 6 of the 8. I looked at the Juric against Allegri, thought there might be an angle in here. Juric incredibly doing well at Atalanta after that awful spell as Saints manager in England last season. He's only won 1 of 10. Allegri's won 6 when they've gone head-to-head various different teams over the years. It's a pick-em. It's each of 2. Can you split them for us, James? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting game, this, because you've got 2 teams who, rightly or wrongly, have been on the receiving end of some criticism, I think, this season. You can look at Atalanta 2 different ways, can't you? Yes, they're unbeaten, but you could also say, well, they've only won 2 out of 8. You know, which way do you go with it? I tend to be a bit more negative with Atalanta for the simple reason that I think their fixtures have been quite straightforward, actually. And I'd be a bit disappointed if I was an Atalanta fan to have won only 2 out of 8. They have played in their 8 games so far 3 of the teams who are currently in the bottom 6. So I think there were opportunities to get more points on the board when you look at who they faced. The only team they faced who are currently in the top 6 are Como, who are 6th. So they've not faced any of the real heavyweight sides so far, Atalanta. That's why, you know, if you're unbeaten 8 games in, it's obviously a good look in some ways, but I'm slightly concerned about how they will fare when they face some of the top sides. And on Milan, you know, people have had a go at them for being, you know, slightly inconsistent in terms of their performance. They haven't necessarily won games by big margins or managed to dominate games for the whole 90 minutes. But they are unbeaten now since the opening game of the season. They lost that one to Cremonese. They've since gone unbeaten in 7. They've won 5 and they've drawn 2. So even though I don't think they are playing at their best, I do understand some of the criticism of the Milan performance level. Results-wise, they've been pretty good. So, you know, it's obviously priced up as though the 2 teams are fairly similar chance to win it. Arguably fair. I'd rather be with Milan than be with Atalanta. I think probably on the money line, the draw is a value pick there at plus 220, plus 225, something like that. I prefer the goals market on the game. If you're looking across the board at which way to go, I think both teams to score yes is definitely worth a look. That's available around minus 130. Both teams have been scoring pretty well. Atalanta have scored in 7 out of 8. Milan have scored in 7 out of 8, and they've not really been defending that well. Atalanta have conceded in 6 out of 8. Milan better, only conceded in 4 out of 8, but they've not looked that solid to me defensively. So I think a scoring draw might be a way to play. If not, then just the both teams to score yes looks good to me, because I think both teams will see it as a winnable fixture. I think Atalanta, obviously having only won 2 out of 8 at home, yes, they're playing a decent side here, but they're going to be quite keen to win because they haven't managed that many. And I think Milan are in really good form in terms of results, and we'll go there looking at an Atalanta side who I think they will see as beatable. So interesting match, lots of different angles on it, but taking everything into account here, I think the goals is a slightly better pick for me than the money line. I saw some comments about people wanting to be with Milan. I do generally agree with that, but I think both teams to score at around minus 130 might be a bit shorter than that now, minus 140 maybe. But I think that will offer you a better chance of getting a return here.
Yes, Dave says, after watching Milan last game, I really like both teams to score against Atlanta. FJ says, not great odds, but fancy both teams to score.
Yeah.
FJ Football, Lookman to score, ? He's not scored this season. He's only started 3 Serie A games. He's not scored for club or country. I think he's had I know that he wanted to leave the previous summer after they won the Europa League and it didn't come off. And I think he might be frustrated that move didn't come, i.e. back to England. And you tend to think he might have missed his window after. Did he get hat-trick in that Europa League final?
Yes.
I can't remember,
Yeah.
And I think maybe he's one that's, just been a bit frustrated with his situation. I'm guessing a little bit there. What else have we got here on comments? Dave Clark says, Raphael, frustrating to watch. Looks like he doesn't even try or really give a damn. I will translate that last word too. One thing about Raphael, and I looked into his stats today because I thought, is he any sort of value shot on target? We know he's going to be short. Last I looked, he was minus 136. He's only started 3 games this season because he's had a calf injury. He scored every single time that he started. He's on penalties at the minute because Pulisic's out injured. And he's playing as a 2 alongside Jimenez in a 3-5-2. So he's playing further forward. He's fit and he scored every single time he started. He scored against Bari in the Coppa Italia. Then he got subbed off because he got injured. He started the last 2 and he scored. He's on penos. He's minus 136 last I looked. I think that's fair. I mean, he's not. He can be frustrating, but I think he's a little bit going back to the Lookman situation. Leao, if he wants to move to England, if he wants to get the big bucks coming to England, he's got to have a more consistent season this season. And the last 2 games, I mean, he's plus 290 anytime goal scorer. If we're looking at both teams to score, yes. We're looking at a few goals in the game. I think he's. I mean, for a shot on target over 0.5, he'd be my play, I think. But I understand he can be frustrating a little bit, but I've not seen it this season. I've got to admit that, Jack.
Yeah, I was reading some feedback from people who were at the game actually at the weekend for Milan. It was the 2-2 draw, wasn't it, against Pisa? The general feeling is that he does make a difference to that team. When he's available, which, as you say, Dan, he's not always been this season. I know he can be. I do take the point. He can be frustrating, and I think they're being labelled inconsistent does make some sense. In this team, however, with Milan not being at the absolute elite level of Europe, I think having a player like that in as opposed to out of the side, it does make a difference. It gives them something different in attack. And I think in a funny way, Raphael Leao, he's almost a victim of how involved he can be in attack because he is such a threat with the pace as well as the technical ability that he's got. He can look quite wasteful to me in terms of not everything he tries in a game comes off, but he tries an awful lot of things in a game. You know what I mean? So it's like he can maybe miss a few, but manage a goal or miss a few and manage a couple of shots on target. I think his output can be so big in a match in a team like Milan, where he's so important, that it can be misleading. If you look at the anytime goal scorer price there of plus 255 on Rafa.
He's come in a little bit. He's just plus 290 when I was looking. I mean, who would you rather back, Lookman at plus 230 or Leao at plus 255?
Yeah, I mean,
in a game that's pick 'em in odds.
Yeah, I'd be on Raphael Leao there because I think he's coming hot, in terms of being back in the side. You mentioned as well, Dan, Pulisic started the season really well for Milan, didn't he? So he's a miss at the moment for them. This is the guy they're looking to, and it's a great game for him because he's up against a team who've conceded, in lots of their matches. So what an opportunity to maintain what he's shown over the last couple of games. So I do get it. As I say, I think some of the criticism of him is justified because we have such high hopes for him. He looks such a fabulous prospect for many seasons now almost in terms of what he's got in his makeup. But I do think he's an effective player for this team, and they are much better, I feel, when he's in it than when he's not.
Both teams score, yes, is our general consensus here. I like Leao. I know that one or two of the commenters are a little bit down on him. FJ says, Milan win, both teams score, great odds. We'll bet it a bit. Phantom Jack says, shout out to Stephen James for Friday's show. I was going to leave a comment under the video, but since you're here, at 80 to 1 overs bet, and some of your advice, especially in France. There's a lot of overs in France. Yeah, maybe there was.
There was a few games.
Ray's with us. Good afternoon to Dan and James. A real Brendan King says, I think Steve is an anti-Yuri. He is a bit, which also makes me lean on Milan. Dave, both teams to score parlay with Napoli on the money line. Bula Charles talking about Dave's comment. What else have we got here? Duncan, both teams score Atalanta double with Napoli. That seems to be the one, doesn't it? That's the chat daily double. It's not our daily double. We've had the first leg, but not the second leg.
It nearly was. Let me say that. It nearly was the daily double. So I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Duncan Enyori says, I see an Atalanta win. The least they can do is draw. Well, yeah, you could play the double chance and maybe sort of double it up. In terms of where the money's been going, 77% of the money, 85% of the tickets on Milan. Most of the money on the overs, 65% of the money, 78% of the tickets on overs. We've had a grand on draw at plus 230. Well, given the way that Atalanta are playing, I can see that. Each of Atalanta's last 6 Serie A night matches have resulted in a draw, and both teams to score has hit in 9 of Atalanta's last 10 games played under the lights. That's Serie A done and dusted with. We've had leg 1 of the daily double with James's thoughts on Napoli. We'll get to leg 2 shortly. We've got some League Cup football to come with. We're not going to get to the second leg of it just yet. We're going to first of all talk briefly on Grimsby against Brentford here. Grimsby, of course, were Manchester United slayers earlier on in the League Cup. The plus 650 here. They're around about, I think they're about 12 to 1, 13 to 1, plus 1300 to beat United. Brentford are a minus 278 here. I mean, it begs the question, are Brentford that much worse than Manchester United? Many would say not. Look, the goal scorers we've put there for Brentford, I'd be very surprised if Thiago Ashada played. Ouattara might do. Keith Andrews has said that he's going to rotate. Marco Silva has said he's going to rotate. However, he's also said because of injuries, he might have to play quite a few from the weekend defeat at the hands of Newcastle. That makes me think, oh, sorry, I'm talking about Marco Silva. I'm talking about Keith Andrews here. I think that if you look at the way that Brentford have changed and rotated in previous games against Villa and Bournemouth, we'll get to Fulham shortly, then I think that they have enough to win this game, but I don't really want to bet them at minus 278. James, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly how I saw it, Dan. I think that price on Brentford is not particularly appealing, even though you would expect them to win, even if they rotate. Exactly what I was thinking. But if there's a lot shorter on Brentford, you would maybe have a look at them on the Asian handicap or something like that. But I don't see much appeal here. Does it make a difference that they're playing a team in Grimsby Town that have already beaten a Premier League team? I think it does, really, because from Grimsby's point of view, will that affect how they approach the game and how they feel about the game? It probably would. If you try to put yourself in their shoes, as a side who've beaten Man United to get here, it just takes away a little bit of the fear factor, I think, of facing one of the top teams, one of the teams from the Premier League. They'll feel they won't necessarily be outclassed. They'll be less overawed, I would imagine, on the pitch against Premier League players, having done what they did to Man United. So I looked at that moneyline price and, I just think Brentford are too short to be interesting. Grimsby, form-wise, are doing okay. They play in the 3rd tier of English football. The fourth tier. Yeah, the 4th tier of English football. They're pushing to be promoted out of that division, so their form is all right. But it's very hard, when you've got 3 divisions between sides, and obviously the team news here is difficult to know precisely, especially from the Brentford side. I think a lot of these mainline markets are tough to call. So I just dug into it a little bit more. I looked at some of the props markets. What's clear about Grimsby playing at the level that they are, which is the 4th tier, they're an attack-minded side. They've got a lot of goals this season. They've also managed the most attempts on goal in their division, nearly 15 attempts on goal per game. And they're managing 5 shots on target per game. So this is a side who at their level are very attacking. If you then look at the props markets on the game, Grimsby to have over 2.5 shots on target is available at minus 127, so fairly close to evens. Grimsby to have over 8.5 attempts on goal is available at minus 107. In other words, the price on Grimsby to manage shots on target and have attempts on goal is pretty good if you look at how they're performing in the league. Now, of course, they're not playing a fourth tier side tonight. They're playing a Premier League side. It's very different. You wouldn't expect them to manage as many attempts on goal or shots on target. But I don't think there's a reason why Grimsby would change the way they play. So I think the attack-minded style that they've got will probably stay. They're a possession-based side as well. That will probably stay. I'm not sure you can switch out of that just for one game like this. So we know what we're going to get, I think, from Grimsby. Even if they are second best on the night, I think they're going to be pretty positive. You may want to look at those prop markets if you dig into the stats. But generally speaking, Dan, I looked at those top line prices, money line and goals. And for me, there's not enough here on the match to be really confident about any of those markets.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just to circle back to one or two comments, the half space, I should mention this because he's put up a good Edison stat. Said Edison had a shot on target in 10 of his last 11 starts for Atalanta, and he's around about -$2 to have at least one. Just circling back to that, I thought it was interesting. And Effie suggests that maybe it's going to be unders in that game. He said it might disappoint. That's the Atalanta Milan game. Duncan and Yoni says Brentford to crush Grimsby by at least 2 goals. Well, you could certainly play that way for sure. Yeah. Let's talk about Wycombe against Fulham. Duncan Evans is with us somewhere in the chat, I'm sure. So he's already suggested that Wycombe will win this one easy, I think. Let's put the prices on. I was getting ahead of myself with Marco Silva. They are Fulham players. And again, Marco Silva has suggested that he's going to have to play some of these. I think Kevin will play. And I'm not sure about Josh King. Jimenez might have to play because they're short of players. They're short of defenders. They're short of attackers. No Muniz. I think Fulham will win. Sorry, Duncan. Duncan says Coley Woodrow, anytime goal scorer. That is his selection, I think, here. He knows where that is. Isn't afraid to budge the net. Well, why not? If you want to have a go at Wycombe, I've always got a soft spot for Wycombe. I used to do local radio for Wycombe 25 years ago, Duncan. Don't know if you remember that. Anyway, Fulham on this one. I like both teams to score, yes, here. I think Fulham as Shauna defenders are gonna have to play some good attacking players. Smith Rowe will play, I think. Oh no, he's injured. I think he's in. He picked up an injury at Newcastle.
You're right.
I think this is one that might be entertaining, might go overs. Both teams to score, yes, was my lean. What you got for us on this one, James? Yeah,
well, I'm taking quite a strong view on this. People can agree or disagree with the methodology behind it, but I'm strongly backing Fulham here, -182. I think they're a good bet to win it, and it's mainly psychological rather than team news. They do have some problems. You're right. I think Smith Rowe is one of the players who is out, and there are plenty of others as well if you look at the team news. But my feeling with Fulham is that when you're a team in the situation that they are going into this on the back of 4 straight defeats, I think winning a game like this against a team from 2 divisions below you in a cup competition becomes even more important, because if you lose this, the pressure really does start to mount on you in all sorts of ways, not just in terms of your confidence next time you go out on the pitch, but questions will be asked about maybe the manager, but certainly players in certain positions who've played tonight. I think the entire club knows that when you're out of form, in your division, you cannot afford to lose to a lower league side in a cup competition. So I think Fulham will be really fired up to get a win here. I'm not saying they wouldn't be if they were in much better form in the Premier League, but if you're a 5th or 6th in the Premier League and currently on a good run of results, you may be a little bit more relaxed about how you approach this game. Don't think they can afford to be at all here. So team news is an issue. They are going to be under strength. Even if they didn't rotate, we know they're going to be under strength because there's 1 or 2 players missing, and that is a concern. Wycombe are not necessarily the toughest side you could face at this stage of the competition. Let's be honest. It's not meant to be disrespectful, but they're a 3rd division team and they're not in great form themselves in the bottom half of that 3rd tier.
Duncan Evans comes around and says, come on, James, I expected better from you.
I do apologise, Duncan. I'm going in on them here a little bit, but it's really, to be honest with you, 80% of my thinking on this game is about Fulham, and I just feel that you have to win this game if you're Fulham. If you are facing a championship side, and the championship side maybe mid-table or above, I'd be a little bit nervous here about siding with Fulham. But I think the gap between the 2 teams in general terms is just big enough that Fulham can be a couple of players down here and be okay. So I think they should get the job done. I'm not saying it will be easy all the way through. I'm sure they'll have some nervy moments. And I think the fact they're not playing especially well means it might not be the best performance from them, but there should be enough quality there to get the win. So they're -180, aren't they? Something like that to get the win. This is the second leg of my daily double. I am doubling up on 2 money line picks today. Napoli to win, Fulham to win, which will pay out as a plus money double. I think they are the 2 strongest picks on the games that we're covering today.
Good stuff. And look, Michael Duff, the Wycombe manager, has said that, look, we'll pick what we think is the best team. We might change shape and players. It's a good opportunity to rotate. Even the lower league teams rotate in the League Cup. Yeah. I think Marco said will be stronger than usual. Effie's saying if it's a strong Fulham team, both teams to score. No. Defensively, that's where they're snookered at the minute, because I think Robinson's out, Anderson's out. Yes. So I don't know who's going to play at the back. That's where Fulham are going to, and I think if if Iwobi plays, if Jimenez plays, they'll have too much up top. I'm going both teams to score yes. Both teams to score yes, and a Fulham win, I think is the play for me. But great to see Kevin play as well. He looks a massive talent, signing from Shakhtar, didn't they? And if he plays, I mean, he is a cut above. Sorry, Duncan. Very briefly on the next game, which is Wrexham against Cardiff. I mean, we're talking about, we're never quite sure which teams and how managers are going to rotate. All the Premier League teams say they're going to rotate, and even lower down in the pyramid, when it comes to cup competitions, there is rotation. I don't think there's going to be any here, because this is a proper game. Wrexham versus Cardiff. It's the first time they've played for 21 years, when they played in a Welsh Cup semi, I believe. First time in 23 years in sort of English competitions, if you see what I mean. Wrexham, obviously the higher ranked team, because they're a Championship side. Cardiff were top of League One, but they were usurped by Stockport after Stockport won last night. Cardiff are plus 200, Wrexham plus 128 here. Both have got 1 or 2 injury issues. Wrexham drew with Borough last time out, which was a really good point. Cardiff were beaten at Bolton, and they've lost 3 of the last 5. Barry Murphy, who was a youth team coach at Man City, did really well, has done well with Cardiff here. I've sort of lent under 2.5 for this one, because I think it'll be tight and be cautious, but it's only a very minor lean. James, what do you know? What do you think?
Yeah, well, people might be surprised if they just look at the divisions these 2 teams play in to see Wrexham at plus money, because they are in the Championship, which is the 2nd tier, and Cardiff are in League One, which is the 3rd tier. But actually, if they were in the same division, there wouldn't be much between them at all, would there? Because Wrexham are actually down in 16th, I think, in the Championship, and Cardiff, as you say, having a really strong season, and they're in 2nd. So there's only actually 8 or 9 positions between the 2 teams, if you look at it that way. And I think it will be, for that reason, a pretty tight match. I think the money line prices make a lot of sense, and obviously an all Welsh game between 2 teams who haven't played each other for just over 2 decades. There's a huge amount at stake, which means that both sets of fans and players, I think, will be really up for the game. I like the goals on this game. I think over 2.5 goals is definitely worth a look at minus 113. It's obviously a 50-50 market there. Maybe a little bit more conservative, but my play on the game, which is just a lean rather than a full pick, but I'd have a strong look at yes in the both teams to score market, because we know we're going to get full motivation here from 2 teams who are going to want to win it. And they've both been conceding a lot of goals. I think Wrexham have conceded in 12 of their last 15. Cardiff have conceded in 7 of their last 8. So I'm obviously not digging too much there into the attacking stats for the 2 sides, but what we do know is that we got 2 sides here who are not defending particularly well at the moment. So I think overs would be the way to play on the under over 2.5 line. And I think both teams to score yes. Minus 141, I don't think is too short, actually. I think that's a fair price, because right now I wouldn't be that confident about backing either of these 2 sides to be keeping a clean sheet over 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one tonight. It's be a good atmosphere as well. I don't know what the allocation is for Cardiff fans, but they'll make a bit of noise in North Wales. Good game to watch. I'm probably going to swerve it from a betting point of view. Just a reminder, if you like what you hear on our show, sign up for our newsletter, presuming you get the right one, of course. bettingweeklystudios.com. A newsletter drops on Mondays, and the Betting Weekly Insider, of course, arrives on Fridays. We might have had the odd glitch yesterday, but I'm sure we're doing all we can to rectify it. But look, it's free, a lot of good advice. All the handicappers get involved, so make sure you sign up for that, bettingweeklystudios.com. Just to rattle through some of the League Cup splits for you here. In the Wycombe Fulham game, most of the money is on Fulham, as you would imagine, 80% of the cash, 96% of the money on overs as well. Grimsby against Brentford. Again, it's all money for the Premier League side. 95% of the money, 97% of the tickets. Similar details for overs. And Wrexham against Cardiff here. Most of the money on Wrexham, 72%, and 76% of the tickets. And again, there's cash for the overs. Even though in the under 2.5 goals market, it's hit in each of Wrexham's last 7 matches in all competitions. I think it'll be tight, I really do. I'm going to play the unders line potentially, depending on team news and so on. It's a difficult game to get involved in, I think. Now then, last 10 minutes of the show, because we've got James on the show, we are going to kick it over to some French action. It is all tomorrow. But it's a midweek slate, and there's no way we're letting James escape without talking Ligue 1. So let's rattle through the fixtures. Obviously, you can take down some notes here, or you can just watch it again later at your leisure. But let's get a word on each of these games, shall we, James? First of all, Lorient against Paris Saint-Germain. First 4 listed there are 2 p.m. kickoffs all tomorrow. Paris Saint-Germain short price favourites, minus 420. Will they win? Are we playing them on the handicap? Yeah, definitely. Paris Saint-Germain probably at this stage my strongest pick of the League One card tomorrow. Need to wait a little bit later for team news later, but reports coming out from PSG this morning is that the squad certainly looks pretty strong. João Neves has been out injured. He should be back. The issue with PSG is that they are rotating a lot, because they obviously had a really long 24-25 season. Manager Luis Enrique is picking and choosing which players he uses in which games, making sure everybody gets plenty of rest. It almost doesn't matter. They've been so good recently, even when they've rotated, that they should win this game for me fairly comfortably. So minus 420 to win it. Probably should be shorter than that. I think anybody that watched them against Brest at the weekend when they won 3-0 with players missing would have seen just how much better they are than teams like Brest. I actually think Lorient are a weaker side than Brest. Yes, Brest missed a penalty. They could have brought it back to 2-1, but I just think PSG would have moved up another gear after that anyway. So price on PSG, as I say, minus 420. If anything is not short enough, you can back them on the Asian handicap with a minus 1.5 goal start at minus 141 at the moment. With that, PSG need to win by a couple of goals for you to cash. They are very capable of winning by a couple of goals here and possibly more. Let's not forget Lorient lost 7-1 at home to Lille earlier this season. I'm not saying it will finish 7-1, but there's a big difference here in quality. And if PSG want to win it by a couple of goals, then I think they will do. PSG to cover the handicap. What about Metz against Lens here? Metz have been dreadful recently. Yeah, they have. And again, this is fairly strong play from me. I think the price on Lens has already moved. They've got shorter at minus 215, and they might shorten still because they go into this game in great form, but also with great morale. They've just beaten Marseille 2-1 at home. They're playing really good, coherent football at the moment. Lens, very well coached. They've got a full team here. They're going to go strong, I think. And Metz, like you say, they've been awful, Dan. They've yet to win this season. They've lost 7 out of 9. And when they're losing big. They lost 6-1 at the weekend at Lille. I think they've lost 5 of the 7 games they have lost by 3 or more goals. They're tending to collapse when they go a goal behind. So there's a huge difference here, not just, as I say, in terms of form, but also in terms of just the mood in the camp. You've got a Metz team who can't get a win from anywhere, facing a Lens side who've just beaten Marseille. I think we'll see that in the way the two teams go about it. I think Metz are going to go out there wishing they didn't have to play another game, to be honest. And Lens are going to go out there really keen to get another win. So minus 215 on Lens is obviously really short. I think you can get them minus 1 on the Asian handicap at the moment at minus 129. I definitely have a look at that because it would be a big surprise to me if Lens didn't win this game. Those are the 2 games that James picked out that we've got sort of significant lean/official plays on. Let's just rattle really quickly, James, through the rest. Tell me if you've got any interest on these. We have got Nice against Lille next up here. Nice, biggest overperformers in the league, I make it. What do you think here? Almost pick them, Lille the favourites? Yeah, Lille are favourites. The prices have moved massively again here. It's always difficult, I think, when there's a midweek round of game because everybody doesn't have as much time to sort of prep for the next games with these taking place on Wednesday night. Prices have changed. I think actually Lille were
I think they were outsiders, slim outsiders, but outsiders nonetheless when the prices opened up. I think they deserve to be favourites. Nice have had some very good results recently. I personally don't think they've played quite as well as those results would suggest. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure they're as strong as they look if you just look at their recent points total. So no strong play on this for me at these prices. I think they're fair. And Lille were very good at the weekend. They won 6-1 against Metz. Obviously, Metz are a weaker side than Nice, but Lille have been brilliant. And I think those prices are just about right.
Le Havre, Brest underachievers according to my XG charts. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think, again, no strong views on the outcome here. The prices look pretty good. Le Havre had a good win at the weekend. They won 1-0 at Auxerre, and for me, were good value for it. I felt they had been a little bit unlucky to not have more points on the board before that game. They made up for it with that win. So, tough game to call because I think those two teams are fairly well matched, as the price would suggest.
Of the later kickoffs, Nantes against Monaco, I backed Monaco -1 and can't believe that they didn't win by more than a goal at the weekend against Toulouse. What do you think in their game at Nantes?
Yeah, it's interesting times at Monaco because they've only just recently appointed this new manager who came in from Union Saint-Gilloise, Sébastien Pocagnoli. He is changing the way they're playing at the moment. Anybody that's watched Monaco under the previous manager, Adi Hutter, and has watched the first few games under Pocagnoli will have noticed they are pressing with far greater intensity. And I think it's a good idea. I think they've got the players to do it. And I think long-term, it's a system that should work. Don't think they're quite able to carry it out as the manager would like yet over 90 minutes. So I think that is part of the issue with Monaco. I don't think right now you can guarantee a really consistent or dominant performance from them over 90 minutes. There's also team news. They are without their top two midfielders at the moment, Denis Zakaria and Kamara. Is also an issue because the cover for me in centre midfield isn't great. So I'm sort of taking a watching brief on Monaco at the moment. As I say, I think they made a good appointment with the manager and the system he's trying to put in place should work, but there will be some teething problems, I think, along the way.
Paris FC against Lyon. Lyon slight favourites for this one, James.
Yeah, the big news out of Lyon on the back of the weekend is they've lost their very exciting young Belgian winger, Malik Fofana, for 3 months to injury. He was injured in a challenge which saw the Strasbourg player get sent off. Actually, I don't think he meant it, but it's a big problem for Lyon because he is their most dangerous attacking player, is Fofana. There's other good players in that side. Corentin Tolisso is having a very good season, but just something to take into account with Lyon because their squad isn't the biggest in League One these days, and Fofana is a very dangerous attacking player. So again, I'll be taking a watching brief on this and see how they cope without him, but wouldn't surprise me at all if they struggle to create some chances, certainly from that left-hand side.
FGA Football says Toulouse home win. They take on Rennes. They're +110.
Well, yeah, maybe. I'm leaving this one alone because there's a huge amount of speculation going on at the moment around the Rennes manager, Habib Bey. People may remember him as a Newcastle United and Aston Villa defender, I think, in the Premier League. Under a lot of pressure at Rennes. They spent a lot of money. They've given him a very good squad of players. They're not playing especially well. I tend to agree with the comment in the sense it does give Toulouse an advantage because I think that Rennes will be fairly nervous here and I think Habib Bey's position is under real threat. Having said all of that, I still think Rennes have got the better set of players. So weighing everything up, it's a game that I will personally be leaving alone here.
And just two more here. Strasbourg -157, unlucky against Lyon, thought. Auxerre +390. What do you think?
Yeah, Strasbourg I like here. I'll be having a long look at them on the handicap because obviously -157 is quite short, but I've taken a view now on Strasbourg, having watched them in the Sunday night match against Lyon. We were on them from the European show, Dan, weren't we? I think it was my one unit pick. They were a bit unlucky. They conceded the Lyon winner late on. Strasbourg do, I have to admit, however, lack a bit of experience in their side. They've got one of the youngest teams in the division, which is making them extremely exciting to watch. And I really like what they're doing there. But I'm starting to think they're maybe better suited to sort of flat track bully some of the more average teams in the division. When they've come up against some of the more experienced sides like Lyon, like Monaco, like Marseille, they did lose all three of those matches. They played well in them, but they did lose. I think some of their game management still needs a bit of work and maybe they haven't quite got that yet. This is a great game for them because they're playing an Auxerre side who are very average and they should get the win. So -157 is obviously quite short, but I'll be looking at them maybe -1 on the Asian handicap.
And lastly, Marseille, short price against Angers, minus 455. Handicap or leave alone? Or
Yeah, handicap or leave alone. I think you can get Marseille minus 1.75 on the Asian handicap, close to even money. You'd need them to win by a couple of goals. Very capable of doing that, but Angers looked pretty good to me at the weekend. They won 2-0. So it's one of those where I think all the lines on this Marseille game are just about right, and therefore I will probably leave this one alone.
Peter's talking about the Eintracht Frankfurt Dortmund Cup game. I backed Dortmund betting without in the Bundesliga, so I'm hoping maybe they get knocked out of that. But Peter's putting one or two thoughts on chat. Jake's talking about what's the 3 p.m. start. We've got this odd week where US and UK is just a little bit odd, Jake. We're 3 p.m. UK, we're 11 a.m. Eastern as per usual. Next week we'll be back to what we normally are. What else? Someone asked about Tanner Tessman. We've talked about him on the show a lot. He's one of our favourites.
Yeah, good player, but more than a good player, very good at hitting the shot on target relative to the price the market offers, to be very specific on Tanner Tessman. Yeah, good player. Key member of a good Lyon midfield this season. He's found his place in that midfield with Tyler Morton, the former Liverpool player, and Tolisso. It looks very good. So I don't quite know where he sits in the pecking order at the moment for the USA national team, but for me, based on what I'm watching with my League One hat on, he should be pretty close to a starting spot, I think, in that national team.
Let's wrap it up. Daily double reminder. James, what is it?
Yeah, daily double. It is Napoli on the money line to win their game at Lecce and Fulham on the money line to win their game at Wycombe. It will pay out at around plus 130.
Fantastic stuff. We've got Tennis Live coming up very shortly. And also we've got our second Betting Weekly Live coming your way a little bit later on today. Incredible game in the World Series last night. I'm sure that many of you are across the 18 innings in that Blue Jays Dodgers game. Some massive bets laid as well. The boys will be discussing it a little bit later on, I'm sure. Plus, of course, NBA has swung back into action as well. $50,000 play on the Blue Jays money line plus 170, which was a loser against the Dodgers. It just went on and on and on. 18 innings. Incredible stuff. There was some significant, serious wagering going on, and Doug and the gang will be talking about it a little bit later on. But that is your lot from myself and James for today. James, enjoyed your company.
You too, Dan. Thank you.
Great to see you on. And of course, we'll be back with the European show a little bit later on this week. I'll be back with Nigel. The boss is going to come on tomorrow. We'll be talking League Cup, and we'll be reminding people of James' plays on the Liga action tomorrow night as well. But plenty of betting opportunities this evening. Have a good betting night. Hopefully, we can cash some tickets, and we'll be back tomorrow.